Well, let me tell you about Sister Mary. Sister Mary, who worked for a home health agency, was out making her rounds visiting homebound patients when she ran out of gas. Fortunately for her, a gas station was just a block away. So she walked to the station to borrow a gas can and buy some gas. The attendant told her the only gas can he owned had been loaned out, but she could wait until it was returned. Since the nun was on the way to see a patient, she decided not to wait and walked back to her car. She looked for something in her car that she could fill with gas and spotted the bedpan she was taking to the patient. Always resourceful, she carried the bedpan to the station, filled it with gas, and carried the full bedpan back to her car. As she was pouring the gas into her tank, two men watched from across the street. One of them turned to the other and said, "I swear, if it starts, I'm definitely turning Catholic." There you go. All right. Use your own imagination how that fits into my talk. So we had Janice Stanfield last week. We got to have her like on a whim. And it was an automatic yes. She was in town doing a concert in Virginia, and Nina called and said, "Would you like to have Janice Stanfield?" I'm like, yes. So the Metaphysical Master series that I was in the midst of, I just thought, well, just move it on up. So that's what we're doing. So we're continuing our series on male metaphysical masters, at least for the next 2 weeks. So today we are highlighting Ernest Holmes. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about Ernest Holmes. Probably many of you know who Ernest Holmes is, but I am bringing Ernie, I call him, and his wisdom into this conversation of freedom this morning. But let me tell you a little bit about Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes founded the International Religious Science Movement, wrote the classic book, The Science of Mind, and numerous other books on metaphysics. He also founded the international monthly periodical called Science of Mind magazine, which has been a continuous monthly publication since 1927 and has impacted millions. His Science of Mind teaching is recognized today as a spiritual philosophy that teaches a positive, supportive approach to life. And this is what he had to say. There is a divine urge within everyone to know more, be more, and express more. And I have found that the thing we are searching for is the thing we are searching with. Ernest Shirtleff Holmes was born into poverty in 1887 on a small farm near Lincoln, Maine. He was the youngest of 9 sons. His mother was a school teacher and his dad a self-educated farmer. They were Baptists, but apparently not hellfire and brimstone ones, as his parents encouraged their children to question things and be curious when exploring religion. Since his family was financially struggling, Ernest moved around a lot for his father to find work. He eventually moved to Boston. In 1907, his life changed dramatically after reading the essays of Ralph Waldo Emerson. He accepted self-reliance as his guide. He began attending the Christian Science Mother Church in Boston and performed his first mental healings. His own painful, long-term throat ailment healed. He started to study public speaking. In 1914, he discovered the work of New Thought pioneer Thomas Troward and mental healer Thomas Hudson. He and his brother Fenwick studied these principles and began writing, teaching, and lecturing, first together and then separately. In 1924, Ernest traveled to New York to study with Emma Curtis Hopkins, who was instrumental in founding the New Thought movement. Holmes went on to write his great work, The Science of Mind, in 1926, and the following year he launched what would become the religious science movement when he founded the Institute of Religious Science and School of Philosophy, which would later become the Church of Religious Science. After creating the Institute, Ernest resisted the idea of a religion being started around his teachings. However, in 1939, the ordination of religious science ministers began, and by the mid-1940s, religious science churches were established. At the time of his death in 1960, religious science was only second to unity in being the largest denomination in the New Thought movement. So, his biography is quite long. That is really a very condensed version, believe it or not. He was very active and very filled with passion about New Thought teachings and wanted to share them with the world, which he did beautifully. So, okay, here we are. And it always seems appropriate on this weekend, especially wherever July 4th falls, that we have a conversation about freedom. And, I've written several talks, through the years about this topic. And I was looking through them, so how did I approach it then? And how did I approach it then? And it was interesting. What came to me to bring forth today with you is this whole idea of dominion. And maybe it's because we were talking about this last week in my SEE class, Discover the Power Within You, when we looked at the chapter, Your Thought is Your Life. Because I thought, what is it that has us be free? Now, we are inherently free, and I said that in our meditation. Folks, as divine beings, we are inherently free. That is our nature. However, sometimes in our earthly experience, I know for myself, I don't always feel free, especially when my thoughts are swirling downward, like the tidy bowl, about whatever it is I'm in. And so I just wanted to re-presence an idea that Charles Fillmore was also passionate about dominion. Okay, because it says in Scripture that we have dominion over the earth. And look what we've done with that. However, the metaphysical definition of dominion is that we have the ability to take dominion over our thoughts. And sometimes we forget that. And we can feel like we are in bondage to whatever is happening and the story that we've created about it. And so this is a quote from Ernest Holmes about this very thing. He says, "We have thought that outside things controlled us, when all the time we have had that which could have changed everything and given us freedom from bondage." And that freedom from bondage is our ability to take dominion. See, when we're suffering, feeling separate, victimized, angry, and fearful, we are in bondage to the story that we are telling about what we feel certain is the source of our unhappiness. When in truth, the source of our pain and anxiety is the power that we give to the outer world. Our feelings, our experience, and our circumstance. And see, our ability to take dominion comes from our inherent power. If you're familiar with the 12 powers, the power of power is one of our divine ideas that is a dimension of the divine gem that we are. Our language is so limiting when it comes to talking about our divine nature, I find. So Ernest Holmes says that our inherent power knows neither lack or limitation, fear or sickness, disquietude or imperfection. That inherent power is our power of power, which is our ability to take dominion over our thinking and feeling, our perceptions, our attitudes, our beliefs, and our consciousness. And he talks about how hypnotic and mesmerizing the collective consciousness is in our life experience. Now, wow, if there is ever a time that the collective consciousness is interesting right now, is right now. And if you notice, now I notice when I am watching the nightly news because sometimes I will watch it. I feel like, okay, I need to inform myself, and at the same time, it's a push-pull thing, like I really don't want to watch this because it's so negative. And so I get to watch that. I get to watch myself as I watch ABC News with David Muir. I think that's his name. And I notice how I can get sucked into the hypnotic, mesmerizing drama on television. And folks, I just think that, I know for me, that is my reminder that I get to take dominion. And I get to notice my thoughts and notice my fear and notice how I can get worried and anxious about the way I think our world is flowing. Because, folks, what I know is that given that we are one, that my thoughts impact the collective consciousness. And when I can take dominion over those thoughts, I know that I impact the collective. Because, folks, we're not separate. And when we can take dominion over our life circumstances as well as world, everything changes for us when we can change our mind about it. And forgive me if I've told you this story. I don't think I've told you this story. This is what, after 50 sometimes looks like. I'm not going to claim that. I wanted to share with you a story that I did share with a couple of students last week as they are looking at going down the ministerial path. I don't know if I've shared with you that the very first time that I applied to ministerial school, Unity said no thank you. Did I tell you that? Okay. The very first time I applied to ministerial school, I had only been in Unity about 3 years. And I was on the fast track. And I took every class I could to meet the minimum to apply to ministerial school. And so here's Reverend Eileen as my mentor, and she's just going, what is she doing? But it was mine to do to apply. Funny how I never got the idea, I never really saw myself going. But I knew it was mine to do to apply. And she supported that. But she knew I wasn't ready. But she supported my process. That's what mentors do. So I went out to Unity Village, and I went and had my interviews with a couple of panels of ministers. And my feedback was, honey, you're just not ready. And I was devastated. I mean, I felt like that rug had been pulled out from underneath me. And I called Eileen, and I'm like, oh, no, I know you. She goes, I'll meet you at Ben and Jerry's, where we proceeded to eat 5 scoops of ice cream. And in that moment, through processing it with her, I got clear. I said, okay, I get to take dominion. I get to change my mind about this. And I made a commitment in that moment to find the blessing. Because, folks, let me tell you, I was in it deep. Because, of course, I've been called. So I got clear that what was mine to do was to be a licensed teacher. I love these teachings. Why not? So I spent the next 6 years preparing to go to ministerial school. I became a licensed teacher. I applied in 2000 and was redirected. That's what they call it, redirected. and what we think is loser. Unity picks nice, gentle ways of saying no. And so in 2004, I became a licensed teacher. And then I knew it was here at Unity of Gaithersburg in the Dolphin Room when I sat across from Eileen, taking CEP classes at the time, and I said, I think I'm ready. Do you think I'm ready? She goes, yeah, I think you're ready. Here at Unity of Gaithersburg. It was so sweet. So I applied, and I realized, too, folks, that in my first 4T class, I declared I wanted to get a master's degree. And I was in the very first class at Unity Institute. of the 3-year Master of Divinity program. So I share that story with you because, folks, I could have really stayed in my victim. And I'm not saying I haven't stayed in other ways and had to move through it. But for that one, that felt like a biggie. And I just noticed that when I was willing to take dominion and be free from the victim story I was telling about it and the woe and the worry and the fear and all that, would I ever have my dream? Yeah, it changes everything when you're willing to take dominion over your thoughts and claim the inherent freedom that you are. So, this week, I just invite you just to reflect on where you're hurting, where you're suffering, where you're maybe angry, anxious, resistant. And just notice the story that you're telling about it. Notice your thoughts about it. And I just invite you to pick one thought. Just pick one thought. And work on that thought. Work on that thought, just reclaiming your power. Reclaim power from the power you're giving it. Because I know you're telling a story about it. Notice the story. Reclaim power from that thought. What's another way that you could see it? What's another way that you could open yourself up to knowing more fully the truth of what you are and the infinite possibilities that come with that? And I invite you to call forth your power of imagination and try to see it differently. You know, Charles Fillmore talked about seeing it right. Seeing it rightly. When we can use our power of imagination in tandem with our power of power, wow. Because when we can see it, we can claim it. We can know it, and we can change our mind about it. All right? Are you with me? You know that you're inherently free? Okay, good. All right. Let's affirm the truth together. I know freedom as I let go of the past and the fears that have bound me. I am free to be, to express, to love, and to live. And so it is. And so it is.